In this video, I show you a variety of tips and techniques for solving the first 4 centers on your 5x5. So in the vast majority of cases, the first thing you do when solving any center is make a 2x3 block. However, there are multiple different ways to actually create this 2x3 block, and so the most important thing in 5x5 centers is to be flexible in terms of how you create this block. For all of your centers, there will always be many different options, and so it's up to you to choose the best way of solving any particular case. The first way is how I've taught you in the beginner module, which is to solve 1x3 lines. So solving the middle 1x3 line first, and then the 2 outer 1x3 lines. And so we can do that in a case like this. So we've got these two, this one, and these two, and this one down here, such that when we do an R, it makes this line and also makes this line. So in this example, for the white center, the best thing to do, the most efficient thing to do to solve the first 2x3 block is do R to make the 1x3 line and 1x3 line here, rotate it, and then put it up the top. So that's an example of solving centers or solving the first 2x3 using 1x3 lines. So here we have a slightly different case where it would be a little bit inefficient to actually use 1x3 lines. So instead what we're going to do is build the first 2x3 by firstly building a 2x2 block using one center, 2 edge centers and 1 corner center, and then adding a 1x2 block to it to form the 2x3 block. So here we've got these two. We've also got this corner center solved. So what we can do to actually make a 2x2 block is just place this one up here, do a U prime, and then replace this back down. If our corner center was like this, then what we would do is do an R, then do a U, and then bring these two back down like that. And then here we already had the last 1x2 paired up, so we can just solve it like that. So that's how we would create the 2x3 block using starting with a 2x2 block. So the third basic way to make a 2x3 block is to create what's known as the T. So in this T case, what we do is actually make a 1x3 line on one of the outer lines, so not the inner line here, and then put an edge center opposite it. And then what we do is we can replace this 1x3 line with just an edge center so that we get this line, do a U, and then R prime. So an example of a case where this might be useful is where we have something like this. So we have this and we have this corner center already here. So we have this line and this corner center. What we can do is just bring this one up to create the T, move it across, and then do R, U, R prime. And that's quite an efficient way of building that 2x3 block in that case. So then, for any state or any case that you have around the cube, it will be up to you to practice working out and deciding in the moment which of these 3 basic ways you'll use to solve the first 2x3 block of any center. Another quick tip is that you want to try and plan as much as you can in your inspection and really make the most of your inspection time. Also, it's very important to be color neutral in your centers. It's quite easy to look ahead and you don't need to memorize the color scheme around the cube on a 5x5 because you have fixed centers. So you should be able to start the solve on any color. Basically what I do is take a quick scan around the cube and look for blocks like these or pieces already solved on a particular color and then go from there. So here what I've noticed is, for example, red. We've got these red pieces solved in position and we've got all these red corners here, the 2 edges here and that on the bottom. So it will actually be quite easy to keep track of where all these pieces are going because they're all on there, there and there. So we can do something like, put this one from the bottom to the top. So that makes life even easier. So R2, U prime, R2 to create that 2x2 block. And then I can just make another 2x2 block either with these two or these two. So if I do a U prime to make those two, now I know that this edge will go over here and these two will remain here. So once I put that in, I know exactly where my last 1x3 block will be. And I can, do an R, U2, D2 and solve that into place like that. Another thing that people sometimes struggle with is solving the last 1x3 block of their second center. So here we need to find the last 1x3 block of orange pieces. And it's important to use deduction and figure out where pieces aren't going to be, rather than looking all around the cube for where pieces will be. So you need to figure out, okay, the sides on which pieces will be. So here we've got, we see that this edge center is already on this side. And if we look over to the left, if we just kind of tilt the cube very slightly. On the left side, there's no orange centerpieces. Here we have one orange centerpiece, and that means that the last orange centerpiece, so the last corner center, will be on the back somewhere. So what we can do is something like this. So rotate, and then rotate like that. And remember here that our edge center is on the bottom front position, so that when we do an F prime, R prime, then that creates that bar there. And then all we need to do is do a U, L2, and then place it in. It's also important, like with the 4x4, to try and finish with your first center on the bottom face. So here we have this 2x3 block already solved, and we want to solve these two, with this last 1x3 block by pairing up this with these two. So what we can do is either do a D prime, or we can rotate, do an R prime, something like that, to pair these two up. And then instead of rotating back like this and putting it up like that, what we can do is actually do a D prime, which moves these over here, and then do an L. And so what that does is that allows us to avoid the rotation before the second center, and also allows us to look ahead a lot better into the second center. And also note that before that, for example, before even doing the L, we can do something like a U or a U prime to actually preserve this edge, which is already paired up, because it's likely that we'll have to resolve it after we do the L anyway. So we can just do a U prime, move it across, and then we've got a case like this where we've got a 1x2 with this 1x2, so we can do something like L prime, U2, L to make the 1x2 block, and then while we're doing that, we're looking ahead for what's coming next and what we can solve next. Another thing you want to avoid is doing way too many X rotations during your last 4 centers. So here we've solved this red center and we want to finish off this green center, and what we want to do is just do something like an R2, U prime, R2, like that. And we've got this red center on the front. And notice that once we do our R2, U prime, R2, this kind of red center and red and green centers will end up on the front and the U face, which is not ideal at all, because then we'll have to completely flip over the cube and start look ahead into the last 2 centers, and we'll probably have a pause and a big rotation. So that's kind of awkward. So what we can do, instead of something like that, we can go rotate once, R2, F prime, R2, and then we've already got these two on the last two, on the front and the U face, and we can go straight ahead and solve these last 2 centers. So yeah, it's important to, when you're solving your 4th center, make sure that the 3rd and 4th centers end up on the back and the bottom face, or as close to those faces as possible. Another thing that I try to avoid is doing slice moves. So here we've got this 1x3 block on the left, and we see if we do an M prime like that, it makes this 1x3 block with these 2 center, edge centers on the blue side. So if we do an M prime, then U prime, then M, like that, and that puts this in the front and makes this 2x3 block. And you think that's pretty fast and pretty efficient, and we'll essentially be doing this. But I think the M prime moves are particularly awkward on 5x5 because it requires you to just turn this one and keep the other 2 layers stable and not misalign. Instead, what we can do is use wide turns, and that's my preference, obviously, is to use wide turns to do something like this. So wide R prime, and then L, F, L prime. So it looks like this. So wide R prime, L, F prime, L prime, like that, using the wide left. And I think that's far more finger trick friendly and a little bit safer than using the M move for our centers. So yeah, that's something I try to avoid. As a general rule, there aren't really any tricky finger tricks during the centers, so you should also avoid doing slice moves on the right and left hand side, and stick to doing things like wide moves and just outer face turns, because it's probably not necessary at all and probably inefficient to be doing any slice moves during your centers. As you get more familiar with solving centers, you will find that look ahead will get a fair bit easier, because all you're looking for is one piece, one sticker on each piece. So particularly for the 3rd, 4th and last 2 centers, you want to turn quite quickly once you get comfortable with actually solving them. One place where I see a lot of people pausing is after solving their 1st and 2nd centers, and I would advise against pausing for too much and really just deciding in the moment very quickly which center is going to be your next one, and not spend too much time processing. There aren't any hard and fast rules, but for me the process goes something like this. So essentially, after I finish the first 2, I'll rotate, look at these 2 faces, figure out, okay, is there anything good on this red face? Probably not. I only see these 2 in this one, and there's only one other red centerpiece here. Is there anything good on this face? No, nothing good at all. So then I'll look, okay, what are the other blocks and other pieces that are available on here? And I see this block and this block on the blue. So what I'll do, I know the green is here, I'll do an X prime, and what do you know, the blue center will be quite easy because I've got this block, and these 2 as well. So I can go straight ahead and solve the blue center. So it's basically, if I see nothing on these first 2, then I'll look for blocks and do one of the other 2 centers. However, if I was to start centers like this, for example, I would immediately see there was good stuff on the blue face, and I would go straight in and solve the blue. I hope all of these tips helped. I want to emphasize again, the biggest thing with centers is being flexible in how you solve them, and I'll be doing some examples in the example solves later on in this module.